Brexit for the United Kingdom is a multifaceted process and one that has to be negotiated in a context of significant political and constitutional tensions. In many respects, the EU referendum in June 2016 raised many more questions than it answered. The decision to leave was essentially determined by English and Welsh votes. Majorities in Scotland and Northern Ireland voted for the UK to remain in the EU. This has helped revive talk of a second independence referendum in Scotland. With Northern Ireland, the overall Leave vote has forced people to consider the economic and political implications of a hard border on the island, and the implications of this and Brexit more generally for the future of the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement. The process of determining the UK position on Brexit has also raised questions and produced tensions between the UK government and the devolved administrations. What role should the devolved administrations have in the process? Initially, the position of Theresa May was clear. When in Edinburgh, immediately after becoming Prime Minister, she stated, "I'm willing to listen to options, and I've been very clear with the First Minister today that I want the Scottish Government to be fully engaged in our discussion. I've already said that I won't be triggering Article 50 until I think that we have a UK approach and objectives for negotiations. I think it is important that we establish that before we trigger Article 50. At the Conservative Party conference in October 2016, May insisted that she would consult and work with the devolved administrations for Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland because, as she said, we want Brexit to work in the interests of the whole country. However, she has been equally clear that there will be no differentiated withdrawal. Again, at the Conservative Party conference, May was firm. We voted in the referendum as one United Kingdom, we will negotiate as one United Kingdom, and we will leave the European Union as one United Kingdom. The unwillingness to consider some form of differentiated withdrawal frustrates voices in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Equally, if not more frustrating, is the manner in which the devolved administrations have actually been involved in the UK government's preparations for the Article 50 negotiations. On the one hand, the mechanism for engagement, the Joint Ministerial Committee, has simply not met often enough or involved sufficiently detailed discussion of Brexit issues and challenges to be able to provide the devolved administrations with the opportunity to influence the UK government and for the promised UK approach to negotiations to be established. A Chatham House paper concluded that the Joint Ministerial Committee was an inadequate machinery for intergovernmental negotiations within the UK. Then there is the Brexit Cabinet Committee preparing the government's position on Brexit. The Secretaries of State for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are not members. They simply attend as required. Also adding to tension has been the lack of promised consultation on the triggering of Article 50, the absence of responses to the white papers on Brexit submitted by the Welsh and Scottish governments. At best, it appears that the devolved administrations are information providers, not preference shapers, in terms of the UK government's approach to Brexit. And this understandably heightens concerns about what role Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish interests will play in the wider Brexit process. What role will they have in determining the terms of the UK's withdrawal from the EU, the scope and content of the future UK-EU relationship, and the scope and content of new and replacement trade agreements with non-EU countries? We then have the issue of what is going to happen to those policy competences repatriated to the UK on withdrawal from the EU. Will relevant powers be handed to the devolved administrations and legislatures? If powers are not automatically devolved, who will decide which powers are devolved and when? In terms of implementing the government's proposed repeal bill, the bill transferring EU legislation to statute in the UK, the intended approach is for the devolved legislatures, where appropriate, to decide which elements of that law to keep, amend or repeal. Whether this happens remains to be seen. If there is not meaningful involvement of Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, this will only deepen further the tensions that exist between the devolved administrations and the UK government as a consequence of the UK pursuing withdrawal from the EU.